Recording in progress.
ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाक्षरो निमित्तं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गे राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Bhakti Vaibhav class. We are discussing from Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26. Last time we completed 33rd verse. So in this chapter, Kapil Dev, he is describing the Jnana Marga, Sankhya philosophy in detail. Although Devahuti had no intention of practicing Jnana, but she wanted to hear about Jnana, so that she can become more convinced about the process of bhakti. And that's why in this chapter, Kapil Dev, he is describing the Jnana Marga. And then in this chapter, another description of Virat Roop is coming. First of all, he describes what is the benefit of hearing the Sankhya philosophy. He says, अथत्ते संप्रवक्ष्यामि तत्त्वानां लक्षणं पृथक् यद् विदित्वा विमुच्येत पुरुष प्रकृतेर्गुणैः. One becomes free from the influence of the modes of nature. And therefore, I'll explain this knowledge to you because it can cut off the knot in the heart. Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam. And then he described the interactions between Jiva, Purusha, Prakriti, and the characteristics of Jiva, Purusha, and Prakriti in detail. Then after that, he describes the characteristics of Pradhana, the source of Mahatattva. Then he describes the properties, characteristics of time factor in relation to the effects which the time factor creates. And then he describes the quality, he's describing the quality of various elements. And we are continuing from verse number 33rd. So in verse number 30, so we discussed last time how the senses, karmendriyas, they get power from prana, and jnanendriyas, they get power from intelligence, buddhi. And 32nd verse described what is the product of tamas ahankar. What is the product of tamas ahankar? All the tanmatras and the 5 elements. They are the products of tamas ahankar. And then in the 33rd verse, He now starts describing the characteristics of various elements, starting from sound. So we had completed 33rd verse, I think.
And 34 also.
Okay, and 34 also. So in 34th verse, he describes the activities and characteristics of ethereal elements can be observed as accommodation for the room for the external and internal existences. So from sound comes ether, and ether is the place of accommodation. When there is space, then the living entities they can enter there. Observed as accommodation for the room of external and internal existences of all living entities, namely vital air, senses, and the mind. We'll continue from the 35th verse. नभसा शब्द तत्तन्मात्रा
नभसा शब्द तन्मात्रा
कालगत्या विकुर्वतः
कालगत्या विकुर्वतः
स्पर्शो अभवत् ततो वायु
स्पर्शो भवत्ततो वायुः
स्पर्शस्य संग्रहः
स्पर्शस्य च सङ्ग्रहः
तत्स्पर्शस्य च सङ्ग्रहः.
From ethereal existence, which evolves from sound, the next transformation takes place under the impulse of time, and thus the subtle element touch, and hence the air and sense of touch become prominent.
So he is describing what is created after the ether. So the creation starts from subtle and goes to gross. So the subtlest is the sound. From sound comes the ether. And then from ether comes touch by the influence of time. So everything is happening. The word used many times is Kalagatya or Bhagavad Virya Chodita. These words come again and again. Under the influence of time, the touch appears. And from touch, what appears? Air. Because air has the quality of touch. And then skin is created because skin is a sense organ which can perceive touch. So that's how these various elements are created gradually. So again, Prabhupada writes, in the course of time, when the subtle forms are transferred into gross forms, they become the objects of touch. The objects of touch and tactile sense also develop after this evolution in time. Okay, next verse, translation will read.
Softness and hardness and cold and heat are the distinguishing attributes of touch, which is characterized as a subtle form of air.
So the touch has some characteristics, soft or hard touch, heat or cold. So these are the various qualities. Next verse.
The action of the air is executed in movements, mixing, allowing, close to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing point function all other senses.
So then he is describing the qualities of air. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, the characteristics of air are described. It describes movement. Because of the air, everything moves in this world. In our body also, there are various kinds of air, 5 primary, 7 secondary airs. And because of these airs, all the movements in the body are happening. That's why whenever there is some spasm or some stiffness, people हिंदी में बोलते हैं वात हो गया है. Ayurveda वात बढ़ गया. So that is how when the air movement is restricted, then it obstructs the movement. It causes association, as in bringing grass together. It causes cohesion as one unit. It brings the sense objects such as sound, coldness, or fragrance. Vayur gandhan ivashayat. The air carries the fragrance. So everything is carried by air. It should be understood that movement, association, and bringing the sense object to the sense are all particular types of prapti conjunction. It all happens because of air. So Srila Prabhupada also writes, we can perceive the action of air when the branches move, when the dry leaves on the ground collect together. It is only by the action of air that a body moves. And then Prabhupada writes, paralysis, nervous breakdowns, and madness, and many other diseases are due to insufficient circulation of air. So there are different types of air, manovata, or mental diseases. When the disturbance in the mind increases, then the mental functions doesn't work properly. So it is all because of the air. In Ayurveda system, these diseases are treated on the basis of air circulation. And then after a few lines, Prabhupada writes, our sense of proprietorship over action is also due to the activity of air. If the air circulation is stifled, we cannot approach a place after hearing. So whatever we are able to achieve in this world, proprietorship, we can move and get something only because of the air. So air movement is the most important. So that's why the Vayu Dev is the most important Devta. When he stops working, everyone gets suffocated. So that's what happened when Hanumanji was hit by Indra. He just stopped all the air circulation and all the Devtas were really disturbed. So Vayu is actually one of the primary sense Devtas created by the Lord. 10 sense organs, 10 sense Devtas. So Vayu Deva is one of the most prominent Devtas. Next verse, translation.
By interactions of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is the fire, and the eye sees different forms in color.
So from air comes the form. From form comes the fire, because fire has a form, air doesn't have form. And that's why now we can perceive different forms. Okay. No, that's how the creation happens, from subtle to gross. Creation happens like that. Generally, we think gross is subtle aana chahiye, but it is the other way around here. From the subtle things, gross come. That's why subtle things are more powerful. The more we go subtle, the more the power increases. The mind has more power. This ego, the sense, the intelligence has more power, and then subtlest is the soul. It is most powerful. So that's why all the Vedic system tells to control the subtle things, then the gross things automatically will fall in place. But the current civilization is focusing on how to take care of the gross things. All the in the current times, the moral values are going down. Oh, take care of the gross things, increase the police and increase the protection for women. But the subtle things are not taken care of. That's what the problem lies. People are not able to understand. From subtle things, the gross automatically comes. So that's why it is very, very important to understand how creation is happening here.
Well, mind is more powerful or intelligence is more powerful?
Intelligence. Well, no. Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Higher than the mind is intelligence, higher than the intelligence is the ego, higher than which verse is that? Third chapter, one of the last verses says this. Anyways, one of the last verses of the third chapter says this. Check करके मेरे को भी बताएंगे याद आएगा.
But when Krishna wants our mind to be given to him.
Yeah, because when it is said mind, actually the entire Karana Sharir is taken together. That means Antahkarana is taken together always. Mind is never taken as separate. It is always spoken along with the intelligence and ego.
Indriyani parani.
Indriyani paranyahur indriyabhya param mana manasastu para buddhi yo buddhi paratastu. So mind is always taken along with intelligence in a broad way. But if we go deeper and more segregate, then mind can be taken individually, because ultimately our mind is now very powerful. Why Krishna says control the mind? Because ideally, indriyani paranyahu indriyabhya paramana, higher than mind is senses is the mind, Manasastu para buddhi. Intelligence is higher than the mind, but the problem is our intelligence is corrupted. Our intelligence is materially contaminated. So it is not higher than the mind now. It works whatever the mind says. So that's why the beginning is control the mind. Because our intelligence is not pure intelligence, not spiritual intelligence. It is corrupted, contaminated intelligence, which is working under the directions of ego. The ego wants something, mind supports what ego will like, and intelligence plans how to get it. So that's why the mind should be controlled. That is the basis of all the Vedic principles. In this, Kapila Dev tells the first thing, mind is the pivot in all the yoga systems. Yoga Adhyatmika Pumsa Mato Nishreyasaya. Adhyatmika yoga, I'll tell. So in that first thing he says, mind is the pivot. Control the mind. Because now mind is very powerful. Intelligence is already weak, corrupted, contaminated.
But when we chant, no, when we chant, mind sometimes get fever. So in that case, by our intelligence, we have to, we can tell our mind, okay, बाबा अभी chanting करो, chanting में ध्यान दो, और chanting कर सकते हैं. हमेशा mind कभी कभी मतलब डाइवर्ट हो ही जाता है, तो उसको वापस खींच के आना पड़ता है.
Because now we have got spiritual intelligence.
Okay.
By reading scriptures, chanting purifies the mind, scriptures purify the intelligence, and association purifies ego. So now by reading scriptures, our intelligence is a little bit purified. So now we know, okay, wandering of the mind is not good. With material intelligence, nobody will tell.
Correct.
Intelligence will not tell the mind, come back. If mind goes somewhere, intelligence says, कहाँ जा रहे हैं? चलो मैं भी आता हूँ. How I will plan how to get these things. So because now we have heard, that's why the intelligence supports this.
Okay.
So that is not our intelligence, that is spiritual intelligence. We are purifying our material intelligence. That's why it is supporting in our spiritual practices. That is understanding.
Okay.
Yes. Needless to say, a living entity transmigrates from one form to another. His form changes according to destiny. Karmana daiva netrina jantu deho paptaye striya pravishta udaram pumsa reta kanashaya. According to the destiny and by the arrangement of authorities which controls the interaction of air and mental situation. So all the form we see in this world is because of movements of the air. If somebody is hunchbacked or somebody is paralyzed, that means he has a deformed body because the air is not moving properly. Air can deform. Air can change the shape of a object. So that's why all the forms which one gets is because of the air, interaction of the air. Form is the combination of different types of sense perception. Predestined activities are the plans of the mental situation and the interaction of air. So whatever we have planned, whatever we did, according to that, we get a particular form. Okay, next verse translation.
The characteristics of form are understood by dimension, quality, and individuality. The form of fire is appreciated by its intelligence.
So now he is describing the characteristics of form. From the form comes the fire. So characteristic of the form is dimension, quality, and individuality. So if something has a form, then you can measure it, then you can identify it, then you can say, okay, this is different from this. You cannot identify air. This air is different than this because it doesn't have a form. So form has these qualities, and then because from the form comes fire, fire has a form. Prabhupada writes, Every form that we appreciate has its particular dimensions and characteristics. Forms which are visible can be understood only by touch. That is the independent appreciation of invisible form. So invisible things can be appreciated only by touch, but if something has a form, then you can measure it. You can find the dimensions and you can tell, okay, this is individual. The constitution of a certain object is appreciated by its internal action. For example, the form of the salt is appreciated by the interaction of senses. Form of sugar is appreciated by interaction of sweet tastes, etc. Okay, next verse.
The form of salt and form of sugar. So it's a quality, no? Okay, that quality is one of the characteristics of the
Yes,
form. Fine,
yes.
fine.
Fire is appreciated by its light and by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, and to give rise to hunger, thirst, eating and drinking.
So the basic simple things which we all experience from fire, Kapila Dev is just enumerating all that. Heat and light is the first symptom, and the existence of fire is also perceived in the stomach. Jataragni. Without fire, we cannot digest. Without digestion, there is no hunger or thirst, or power to eat and drink. So that's how, when there is insufficient hunger, that means the Agni is mand. That's Andi Agni Mandyam. Okay, next verse, translation.
By the interaction of fire and visual sensation, the subtle element taste evolves under a superior arrangement. From taste, water is produced, and the tongue, which perceives taste, is also manifested.
So from the fire comes the taste, from the taste comes water. Tongue is described as the instrument for acquiring knowledge of taste. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, okay, he writes in the next verse. Yeah, next verse translation.
Although originally, taste becomes manifold as astringent, sweet, bitter, pungent, sour, and salty into contact with other substances.
So he says, Chakravarti Thakur says, taste, which is actually only one, known as sweetness, by the combination of material objects is divided into many. The original taste is sweet. Then when the sweet objects come in touch with different other material things, then the other tastes, 6 types of tastes they manifest: astringent, sweet, bitter, pungent, sour, salty. So the initial taste is sweet taste. Okay. So he continues. Yes. What are the characteristics of water?
The characteristics of water are exhibited by its moistening other substances, coagulating various mixtures, causing satisfaction, maintaining life, softening things, driving away heat, incessantly supplying itself to reservoirs of water, and refreshing by slacking thirst.
Okay, so these are the qualities of water. Prabhupada writes how life depends on water. Without water, anything can be moistened. With water, anything can be moistened or dampened. As Krishna also says, Rasoham Apsu. All the taste we experience in this world is because water is there. When we eat something very dry, we don't experience the taste. So the water gives the taste to all the things we eat, because that makes the things move, that makes the sweet chemicals move, and then we can perceive, the senses can perceive the sweet taste or whatever taste. So water is very important for perceiving any taste. Prabhupada writes, flour dough can be prepared with a mixture of water. Mud is made by mixing earth with water. Water is the cementing ingredient. If we build a house, water is actually the constituent in making the bricks. Water is the most prominent. Okay. Next verse.
Due to interaction of water with taste, perception, the subtle element further evolves under the superior arrangement. Thence, the earth and the olfactory sense by which we can variously experience the aroma of the earth becomes limited.
From the water and taste perception comes the fragrance. And from the fragrance comes the earth. And then earth and the olfactory sense, the nose arises along with the earth because earth has fragrance. Water doesn't have fragrance, air doesn't have fragrance, fire doesn't have fragrance. Earth has fragrance. And the air just carries the fragrance of the earth. Next verse translation.
Although one becomes many as mixed, offensive, fragrant, mild, strong, acidic, and so on, according to the proportions of associated substances.
Yeah. Punyo gandha prithivyam cha. Original fragrance is the fragrance of the earth. That is punya gandha. So Prabhupada writes, one is punya gandha, other is papa gandha. So when this fragrance comes in touch with obnoxious elements, then it becomes papa gandha. Original fragrance is punya gandha. It is purifying, it is refreshing. So all of us like the fragrance which comes when the first rains fall. So that is the punya gandha. That is the original gandha. And all the other fragrances, they are coming because of the mixture of certain elements. So Prabhupada writes, mixed smell is sometimes perceived in foodstuffs prepared from various ingredients, such as vegetables mixed with spices and asafoetida. Bad odors are perceived in filthy places. Good smell like camphor, menthol are perceived. Then some pungent smells are produced from garlic, onion, acidic smells from turmeric, etc. The original aroma is the odor emanating from the earth. That is the original aroma. And all the others are mixture. Next verse translation.
The characteristics of function of earth can be perceived by modeling forms of the Supreme Brahman, by constructing places of residences, by preparing pots to contain water, etc. In other words, the earth is the place of sustenance for all elements.
So that's how earth provides the place of sustenance. Everything we can sustain is because earth is there. And Prabhupada writes how earth can manifest different forms. And then after a few lines, Prabhupada writes, when a form of Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu is manifested by presentation of a statue made of earth, it is not imaginary form. That is the form which is mentioned in the scriptures. It is the original form. The earth gives shape to the Lord's form as described in the scriptures. According to Shilpa Shastra, somebody should make the deities, not like our गणपति का जो deities बनाते हैं गणेश जी का, कुछ भी बनाते हैं, कभी बैट लगाते हैं और कभी कभी क्रिकेट का बनाते हैं. So a few years back, somebody sent a video. They had made Ganpati Pandal in a form of a bar, liquor bar. और गणेश जी के हाथ में bottle है. So that's how people can go to such perverted ways. They can do anything.
Very offensive.
Very offensive. Yeah, very offensive. So कुछ तो होता नहीं है, खाली DJ and all the songs go on. गणेश जी भी सोचते होंगे किसके लिए आई, गणपति और उनके वाहन देख रहे होंगे, हम तो कब से आके बैठेंगे, ये देख ही नहीं रहे. It is very offensive. Actually, the whole thing is not according to scriptures. That's why Shastra vidim utsrijya vartate kamakarta na siddhim apnoti na sukham na paramgati. If Shastra vidhi utsrijya, if something is done without following scriptures, kamakarta, meri ichha hai, then na siddhim apnoti na sukham na paramgati. No happiness, no next good destination. It is all perverted form. So forms of the Lord should be made according to scriptures. And then Prabhupada writes, Brahma Samhita, there is a description of the Krishna's land. the variegatedness of spiritual abode, and the form of Lord playing Venum Kunantam Arvindadalayakaksham. And then he says, they are not imaginary as Mayavad philosophy says. So, what used is bhavana. Bhavana is misinterpreted. This word comes in the verse. Bhavanam Brahmana Sthanam. Forms, the forms of the Lord. The Mayavadis say, no, that is imaginary form. It is not imaginary form. It is the form according to scriptures. Next verse. Translation.
The sense whose object of perception is sound is called the auditory sense, and that whose object of perception is touch is called the tactile sense.
So after describing the characteristics of all the elements, now he is describing all the sense organs. The sense which perceives sound is called as auditory, then tactile. Next. Translation.
The sense whose object of perception is form, the distinctive characteristic of fire, is a sense of sight. The sense whose object of perception is taste, the distinctive characteristic of water, is known as the sense of taste. Finally, the sense whose object of perception is odor, the distinctive characteristic of earth, is called the sense of smell.
Next.
Since the cause exists in its effect as well, the characteristics of former are observed in the later. That is why the peculiarities of all elements exist in the earth alone.
So former exists in the later. So the sky has sound also, then air has sky, and then fire has air, sky, and sound, and water has fire, air, sky, and sound, and earth has all the five. So while describing all the five rasas, Sadasya, Shanta Dasya, Sakya Vatsalya, Ramanandra gives the same example to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just like all the later elements have the characteristics of the previous one, the higher rasas have the characteristics of all the lower ones. So ultimately, Madhurya has all the five rasas. Okay, continue. Next verse translation.
When all these elements were unmixed, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of creation, along with time, work, and the qualities of the modes of material nature, entered into the universe with total material energy in 7 divisions.
So now he starts the description of Karya Srishti. What is Karana Srishti?
The initial
कहाँ से कहाँ है कारण सृष्टि? From Mahattatva to no, from Pradhan to from Pradhan till कब तक कारण सृष्टि है?
this 5 elements.
Finding all the 16 elements,
Yeah.
all the 16 things. So that is Karana Srishti. And then after this, now the Karya Srishti is starting. Raw materials are ready. All the elements are formed, but they are still unmixed. So they are unmixed. The Supreme Lord, along with the time, work, and the modes, entered into the universe. So it is the Lord who does everything at every step. Without the intervention of the Lord, nothing moves in this world. Bhagavat Virya Chodita. This verse has come many times. These words. Bhagavat Virya Chodita, by the energy of the Lord. Kala Chodita, under the influence of time. So under the influence of the time, by the potency of the Lord, things start working. So what happens? Now the next, after the elements are created, still nothing is happening. So what happens later?
Lord sends Vibrit Shakti.
नहीं उससे पहले क्या होता है? Why Lord sends his Vibrit Shakti? All the sense devtas, they pray. So the prayers, I think it will come. It has come, right?
Previous chapters.
Previous chapters it has come, right? Pura prayers series. And then Lord sends his cohesive energy called as Vibhrat Shakti. And then this cohesive energy enters these elements and combines them to make a universal shell, the golden shell. So that is what is described here. Entered into the universe with the total material energy in 7 divisions. So what are these 7 divisions? Prabhupada writes in the purport. Accompanying him were all the 7 primary elements, the 5 material elements, the Mahat Tattva, and the false ego. So that's how these elements are characterized differently at different times. Kabhi
This,
5 Panchmahabhuta. So sometimes they'll say 3, sometimes they'll say 7, and it depends on how you categorize the elements. So that's why in Uddhava Gita also Krishna tells in detail. Some philosophers they characterize the material elements as 27. Some people say 26, some 25, some 24, some 16. ऐसा करके बहुत सारा, so many things he says, and then he says all are right because there is no wrong in this. It depends on how you categorize things. So here it is 7. Sometimes it is 10. Sometimes it is 15. So it depends on how you categorize. This entrance of the Supreme Lord involves his entering even the atoms. Andantarastha Paramanu Chayantarastham. Next verse, translation.
From these 7 principles roused into activity and united by the presence of the Lord, an intelligent egg arose from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being.
So the Lord enters into this lifeless universe, which is described as unintelligent egg because there is no life in that. Unintelligent. Matter has no intelligence. So therefore it is called as unintelligent. So, but in that unintelligent egg, the Lord expands and enters as which Vishnu? Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, being penetrated by his entrance, the elements became agitated and immediately combined to form an egg. From that, the universal form composed of the jivas, Hiranyagarbha. So what is Hiranyagarbha? The aggregate of all the living entities is called as Hiranyagarbha. That is a subtle form of the universe. What is the gross form of the universe? That is the 14 planetary systems. That is a gross form. That is called as Vairaj Brahma. The subtle form of the universe is called as Hiranyagarbha. The primary soul of the universe is Brahma, the first soul. And the super soul of the universe is Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So it arose. It is not some place where this stays. It is the aggregate understanding of all the jivas put together. बस उनको समझ लिया है, जितने भी जीव हैं उनको बोल दिया हिरण्यगर्भ. ऐसा नहीं कि हिरण्यगर्भ कहीं पे रहते हैं. All the jivas are spread everywhere, right? They are together called as Hiranyagarbha.
But Prabhu, at the time of dissolution, all these would enter the stomach of.
Yes.
That's how it is called Hiranyagarbha.
That way also, Lord is also called as Hiranyagarbha sometimes. Brahmaji is also called as Hiranyagarbha sometimes. It depends on the context. In some places, Brahmaji is also called as Hiranyagarbha. So it depends on the context where this word is used. Generally, Hiranyagarbha means the aggregate of all the living entities put together. That is Hiranyagarbha. And because the living entities are effulgent by nature, the soul is effulgent, so therefore Hiranya, like golden, Hiranya. So when this enters the womb of the Lord, that is Hiranyagarbha also, that is also called sometimes. So then Prabhupada writes, in sex life, the combination of matter from parents, which involves emulsification and secretion, creation creates the situation whereby the soul is received within matter and then gradually evolves into a body. The same principle exists in the universal creation. The ingredients were present, but only when the Lord entered, then the element was agitated. So similarly, that is what happens in the body also. Similarly, the universal creation also is happening in the same way. Next verse, what is happening later? Translation.
This universal head, or the universe in the shape of an egg, is called the manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and matter increase the thickness one after the other. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one, and the final outside layer is covered by pradhana. Within this egg is the universal form of the Lord Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts.
So fifth canto describes in detail the size of each layer. The entire universe is 500,000 yojanas. That is the diameter of the universe. And yeah, अभी मेरे को exact याद नहीं, हाँ 10 yojanas or something. I'll have to check. वो याद नहीं आ रहा है मेरे पास. Each layer, the total layer, if we put all the 10 layers together, that is equal to 500,000 yojanas. So the universal diameter and the layers are equal, same. So each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one and surrounded by fine layer of pradhana. That is the ultimate holding crust, pradhan. And then inside this universe, there is a universal form that is called as Virata Rupa. And then Prabhupada in the purport describes the various planetary systems from highest Satyaloka to lowest Patal. Patal is considered to be the soul of the Supreme Lord. The same universal form Prabhupada describes in the purport again. And then Prabhupada says, Virat Purusha is also Purusha, but he is not Adi Purusha. Prabhupada writes in the purport.
Virat Purusha is an imaginary form.
Yes, it is an imaginary form. Therefore, it is not Adi Purusha. It is just the material form of the Lord. It is not the original form of the Lord. So the Lord has a material form as this material universe. Therefore, it is not Adi Purusha. Adi Purusha is Krishna, the original Purusha, original living entity. Virat Purusha is a temporary form. Adi Purusha is the eternal form. And Adir Govinda Prabhupada writes, there are innumerable expansions of the Lord, and all of them are Purushas. But neither the Virat Purusha nor the Purusha avatars nor any of many other expansions is original. Original केवल एक ही है. एकला ईश्वर कृष्ण आरसभ भृत्य. Ishvara Parama Krishna. So that's what Prabhupada is describing here. Okay, then the last paragraph, Prabhupada writes, this description is of only one egg-like universe. There are innumerable universes besides this one. Some are many, many times bigger. And Prabhupada sometimes says, Prabhupada writes here, this universe is the smallest. Apna sabse chota hoga. That's why Brahma has only 4 heads. We know the story of Krishna calling all the Brahmas, because Brahma comes and tells, Batao Bhagwan ko Brahma hai. So Krishna says, which Brahma? Which Brahma? The father of 4 Kumaras, 4-headed Brahma. So by the time he calls all the other Brahmas, 78, 16, 108, millions of heads, Prabhupada says. I don't know. Prabhupada writes the story here. In Chaitanya Charitamrita it is stated all these Brahmas were called one day by Lord Krishna. Okay, next verse, translation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Virat Purusha, situated himself in that golden egg, which was lying on the water, and he divided it into many departments.
So he divided the entire universe into various planetary systems, that is many departments. Now from 54 to 61st verses, he describes the creation of various limbs of the Virat Rupa. So in all this, the equation is from the gross organ, the subtle organ comes and the sense devatas come. From the gross organ of the Virat Rupa, subtle organs of the living entities and the sense devatas are created. So that is a sequence which will be described in these verses. Translation 54th.
First of all, a mouth appeared in him, and then came forth the organ of speech, and with it the god of fire, the deity who presides over that organ. Then a pair of nostrils appeared, and in them appeared the olfactory sense, as well as prana, the vital air.
So with the organ of speech, Chakravarti Thakur writes, with the organ of speech, the fire devata appeared. That's why it's called as fiery speech sometimes. the fire god is the devata of speech. His speech is fiery.
But sometimes it's not matching here.
Where?
Like the subtle sense organ, why speech should be fire god.
Why speech?
How speech is controlled by fire god.
That is, I don't know, but that is how it is. The fire god controls the speech. So how it happens, I don't know. It is not mentioned by Chakravarti Thakur also here, but that's how it works. That's how it is. So I'm not sure why fire devata is coming from the organ of speech. The nostrils are appearing. I'm not sure about that. Why from organ of speech fire devata is appearing. Okay, next verse translation. 55th verse translation.
In the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god, who presides over that sense. Thereafter, a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in them the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god, who presides over it. Next, there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory sense. And in its wake, the Digdevtas or the deities who preside over the directions.
There must be some reason I am not remembering. For fire ka speech, say relations. There is some relation. I'll find out. It comes in the Puranjan pastime. Puranjan ka description na. So it is described there. How the Puranjan he goes to various cities through various gates. So वहाँ पे it is described. I'll read because all the other things are matching here. Olfactory sense is wind god. Unless the air carries the aroma, you cannot smell. The eyes are they are sun god because unless sun is there, you cannot see anything. And ears, they are dig devatas. So the air travels, a sound travels through the yeah. So Prabhupada writes, the appearance of the different bodily parts of the Lord's universal form and the appearance of the presiding deities of those body parts is being described. As the womb, in the womb of a mother, child grows. Similarly, in the universal womb, the universal form of the Lord gives rise to the creation of various paraphernalia. So that's how the various things, various organs of the universal form are created, and those organs they lead to the creation of the subtle organs and the sense devatas. Everything is happening under the influence of the Lord. Krishna says, Maya Dhakshena Prakriti, Prabhupada writes here. So creation is actually happening under the will of the Lord, under the direction of the Lord. Yat chakshur esha savita sakala grahana. The sun and the moon, they are the eyes. Under the direction, everything is happening. Lord is directing all the creation. Nothing is happening independently. Okay, next verse, translation.
Then the universal form of the Lord, the Virat Purusha, manifested his skin, and thereupon the head, mustache, and beard appeared. After this, all the curves and ruts became manifested, and then his genitals also appeared.
Next.
After this remain the faculty of procreation and the God who presides over the waters appear. Next appear an anus and then the organs of defecation, and thereupon the God of death who is feared of the universe.
The Prabhupada writes, faculty to discharge semen is the cause of death. Therefore, the yogis, they want to live long, they restrain the discharge of the semen. And they can live for many, many hundreds of years. Along with the anus appeared God of death, Mrityu. Because if our sense organ, if the excretory system is not working properly, it is really deadly experience. So it is death. So that's the connection here. The god of death, Mrityu appears. When one can't defecate, can't pass, then there is the airs in the body are disturbed, and then ultimately the health is destroyed. Then the person reaches death quickly. Next verse translation.
Thereafter, the two hands of the universal form of the Lord became manifested, and with them the power of grasping and roping things. And after that, Lord Indra appeared. Next, the legs became manifested, and with them the process of movement, and after that, Lord Vishnu appeared.
So this Vishnu is not Lord Hari. This is another sense Devata who is called as Vishnu. So Prabhupada writes, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes here, Hari mentioned here is not Vishnu, he is a Devata, in whom the Lord enters with his powers. So Lord enters in this Devata, and that's why the legs become manifested. Okay, next verse.
The veins of the universal body became manifested, and therefore the red corpuscles or blood. In their wake came the rivers, the deities presiding over the veins, and then appeared an abdomen.
So Prabhupada writes, blood veins are compared to rivers. When the veins were manifested, the rivers were also manifested. The controlling deity of the water of the river is also the controlling deity of nervous system. So there is a refined science here. How these things are created, one gets cured when something is happening related to that organ. So it is described. According to Ayurveda, those who are suffering from disease of nervous instability are recommended to take bath by dipping in the whole flowing river. Because the river is created, because the deity of nervous system is the controlling deity of river also. So that's why they are related. Okay, next verse, translation.
Today also people use these methods.
वो निर्मल चंद्र को पूछना पड़ेगा भक्तिवेदांत में.
है ना वो सब
वाटर थेरेपी और कुछ ना कुछ तो होता है.
Salt and who recommends to go and take bath, Ayurvedic, take tips in the
Yeah, it is not the only thing which is recommended. That is one of the things which help. All these are the alternate therapies which people use along with the primary things which consists of some medicines or some other procedures. But of course, all these things they help for sure, because that's how the creation happens. So today in our temple, Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, he was giving a talk and he was also speaking the same line. Same things he was speaking, how all the bodily functions, they are connected with the some elements, some devatas, some natural manifestations. So that's why when we are in that place, the some of the bodily functions they become better. So that's why it is just that's the science which is there in all these creation topics. And if somebody researches on that, then one can find the more ways to cure the bodily diseases, because that's how the creation happens. That's how things are connected in the body. Okay, next verse, translation. 60th verse.
Next, drew feelings of hunger and thirst, and in their wake came manifestations of the oceans. Then a heart became manifest, and in the wake of the heart, the mind appeared.
Prabhupada writes, the ocean is considered to be the presiding deity of abdomen, where the feelings of hunger and thirst originate. When there is irregularity in hunger and thirst, one is advised to take bath in the ocean. So it is connected. Hunger and thirst problem, take bath in the ocean. Okay, next.
After the mind appeared, intelligence appeared next, and after intelligence, Lord Brahma appeared. Then the false ego appeared, and then Lord Shiva. And after the appearance of Lord Shiva came consciousness, and the deity presiding over consciousness.
So what is the deity preserving our consciousness?
Here is your Lord Vasudeva.
Lord Vasudeva. Yes.
Yeah.
Vasudeva is the deity of consciousness. Where it is mentioned? Oh, yes. No, because that's what Vasudeva is the deity of consciousness. So Prabhupada writes, moon appeared after the appearance of mind. That's why moon and mind are connected. That's why when things go wrong with the mind, they say lunatic. It is connected with lunar.
But actually, with the waving and waxing also, there's.
Yeah, it affects. Yes, with the waning and waxing of the moon, the mental conditions also get affected. So it is all related. So it is a science which the modern, science cannot understand so easily. Yesterday, one lady was telling that since I was doing a Gita course, so one lady came and she was telling after they shifted to one place, so many health problems have started, and then they found that Vastu is not proper. There are some different things. So she was asking, "Hota hai kya aisa?" Because itna problem shuru ho gaya hai. So that's how some things which we try to deal at a gross level, but the problem is at the subtle level. So therefore, how much we try to solve things at the subtle gross level, subtle problems doesn't get solved so quickly. So therefore, in the Vedic system, everything had a particular way of dealing. Subtle problems, gross problems, they had all different ways of how to deal with them. So that's why all these things are connected.
What did you answer to?
According to the Vedic science, it is a refined science. Vastu Shastra is a refined science. It is not that it is bogus thing. It works, it happens, it has effects on our day-to-day life. So generally, after practicing spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, generally people they take shelter of devotees, they take shelter of Lord Narasimhadev for all these problems. Rather than going to some devatas and doing devata worship and doing all the puja for Vastu Shanti, we don't recommend that. Otherwise, there is a risk involved in that. We are risking our faith. So Lord also can do the same thing which devatas do. And He's a Lord, He can do in much better way. So whenever such topics come, it depends on the situation of a person. If a person is very new, he just came first time to class and you say, नहीं मत करो, सब कृष्ण का नाम लो, and she was telling, मैं तो कृष्ण की कितनी पूजा करती हूँ. She was herself telling. And she was asking, जब से मैंने चैंटिंग करना शुरू किया है, तब से प्रॉब्लम्स बढ़ गए हैं मेरे जीवन में. तो ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? And she's not a devotee as such. मतलब ऐसे ही कृष्ण का नाम लेती होगी. She must be chanting some name. I didn't ask also which name you are chanting. She was saying नहीं, जब से ये सब कर रही हूँ तब से बहुत बढ़ गया है मेरी जन प्रॉब्लम. So that's how Krishna has a different ways of bringing people closer to him. क्या करें अभी? That's how Krishna works. If Krishna thinks taking away everything from this devotee will bring him closer to me, Krishna will take away. Yasyam anugrinami harishyata dhanam. He knows how to make a person humble. He gave everything to Sudama because Sudama was proud of his poverty. No, that's what Chakravarti Thakur writes. He was proud कि मैं इतना गरीब हूँ ना, मुझे कुछ नहीं चाहिए भगवान से, तो भगवान वाले लेना ही पड़ेगा तेरे को. Become humble. So that's how Krishna works. But after practicing bhakti for some time, we generally don't recommend this. Astrology and all those things. They divide our faith. So that's why it is very risky. When we suggest devotees to do all these karmakandi yagyas, devta worship, we are risking their faith. They will go to devta first because devta worship gives quick results. क्षिप्रम ही मानुषे लोके सिद्धि भवती कर्मजा. भगवत गीता में तो बोल ही रहे हैं भगवान का, जल्दी मिलता है रिजल्ट. एंड when जल्दी मिलता है तो क्या करते हैं? आई मेक देयर फेथ स्ट्रॉन्ग इन दैट देवता.
It
बताओ.
depends on the situation and it's.
नो. It does not depend on the situation. It depends on how faithful we are. It does not depend on the situation. If we have faith, worship Narsimhadev. Narsimhadev is there only for this purpose. He has taken his avatar only for this purpose, to remove obstacles from the life of devotees. So why go to any other devta?
Srila Prabhupada installed Narasimhadev only for this.
Only for this purpose.
मुझे इसके बारे में एक मैं बहुत बड़ा अभी का रिसेंटली रियलाइजेशन बहुत सुंदर है. मेरा स्टूडेंट था, बेचारा 3 बार फेल हो चुका था. and he lost his confidence totally. मतलब उसको 3 बार एक सम करेगा ना, चौथी बार तुरंत बोला अभी विदाउट देख कर तो करेगा, लास्ट स्टेप तक आएगा और लास्ट स्टेप में मिस्टेक करेगा. तो मैं उसको बोला तो नहीं भाई, तेरे से कुछ होने वाला है नहीं, तो ये मंत्र पढ़ा दे. कौन सा मंत्र?
अच्छा.
उग्र वीरम महावीर सिखा. मैंने उसको दो डेली तेरे को बोलने का है, डेली बोलने का मैंने को बताना किया कि नहीं. तो ऐसा 1 हफ्ता किया, फिर 1 हफ्ता 2 हफ्ता किया, फिर उसको मैं बोला हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र जब चालू कर. तो उसने जब चालू किया वो पास हो गया.
अरे
एक बार और मतलब नो रीजन.
फिर उन्होंने इनको गोविंदा में लंच दिलाया.
जय हो.
उनको भूल गए खुद ही खाके चले.
उसके पेरेंट्स बहुत खुश हो गए. तो मैंने उनको बुलाया मंदिर में, आ जाओ. तो आ गए थे. उनको हम लोग various ways to bring people. Yeah, I do this.
Yes, करिए, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. Narsimhadev, you can give this Narsimhadev mantra to any materialistic person also, it works. Narsimhadev removes the obstacles from everyone's lives.
और जहाँ पे भी किसी घर पे प्रोग्राम के लिए बोलते हैं नए घर में, तो पहले हम लोग नरसी आरती करते हैं, हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र भी नहीं करते. फर्स्ट नरसी आरती, फिर हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र.
Yeah, that is the way. Ultimately, we should bring them to Hare Krishna. Narsimhadev is protector. It builds the faith. मतलब कितना भी लेक्चर दे दें कि भाई भक्ति में आने के बाद प्रॉब्लम आएगा, सहन करना, but people their faith increases when something good happens in their life. जब से चैंटिंग कर रहे हैं, ये अच्छा हो गया, वो अच्छा हो गया, जीवन में अच्छा है, तब भक्ति में फेथ बढ़ जाता है. आते ही भक्ति में माला किया और माला से प्रॉब्लम शुरू, तो क्यों चैंटिंग करेगा भाई? उसका फेथ ऑलरेडी ऐसा वेरी फ्रेजाइल फेथ. So yes, but established devotees, well established devotees, we should be very, very careful. We should never ever promote worship this devta, worship to all these things. Their faith will be destroyed, or their faith will be divided. Not destroyed, it will be divided. थोड़ा कुछ होगा तो इनके पास जाएंगे, थोड़ा कुछ होगा उनके पास जाएंगे. एंड दे विल से नहीं 16 माला तो कर रहे हैं ना हम, मंदिर भी जा रहे हैं, भागवतम भी सुन रहे हैं, बट it is a subtle level which happens. You know, people give example. अरे बीमार होते हैं तो डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं ना, तो ऐसे ही सटल प्रॉब्लम्स के लिए देवता के पास जाओ। अल्टीमेटली तो चैंटिंग ही करना है ना हमको, बट दैट इज नॉट द राइट वे टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस। When doctor gives medicine, you can perceive the effect, how it is happening. इसका physical effect दिखता है, material effect दिखता है. When we go to devtas, the effect is subtle. So subtle things, they have another influence on the faith. It is not the gross thing. So the way modern science is a gross science, it will not affect our faith. But the subtle things, they affect our faith. So that's why we should be careful.
In Krishna consciousness, we are in the extreme of religion. कुछ नहीं मानना चाहिए. That's what we should not go to. I mean, Sloka says yes, we can ask.
कुछ नहीं मांगना चाहिए.
You should not ask for any favor to Krishna.
That is for pure devotees. They can be at that level. But at a sadhaka level, we should be honest with our aspirations. We cannot act at a level where we are not. We'll be frustrated. We should always try to rise in our consciousness, but artificially we cannot jump at a level where we are not. अभी नहीं मांगेंगे, 10 साल के बाद we will curse कृष्णा. मैंने नहीं मांगा, आप तो दे सकते थे. आप तो अंतर्यामी हो, आपको तो सब मालूम था. आप भक्त के मन की इच्छा नहीं समझ पाए. That's how people they question. So better to ask and be humble कि मैं तो पतित हूँ भाई. I want to rise, but somehow I don't know that this is how I am. I want to raise in my consciousness.
We can ask Krishna to take on the desire also.
So that is what happens, na? Oh, satyam dishati arthitam arthito nrinam naivarth doyat punararthitam yatah स्वयं विधत्ते भजताम अनिच्छताम इच्छापि धानम निजपाद पल्लव. ये बहुत बार बोला है ना मैंने श्लोक, कम से कम 50 बार तो बोला रहेगा यहाँ पर. It is true. प्रभु जी बहुत बार बोला है मैंने. कृष्ण कहे आमा भजे मागे विषय सुख अमृत छाड़ी विश्व मागे यही बड़ा मूर्ख. ये वाला सुना है? ये बोला है ना. इसका संस्कृत वर्जन भागवतम वाला भी बोला रहेगा. एक दो कम से कम 4-5-6 बार तो बोला ही रहेगा. सत्यम, it is true. Arthitam arthito nrinam. If somebody goes to Krishna for artha, Krishna gives that. But naivartha doyat punararthitam. He will never give in a way that devotee will ask for the same thing again. How does he do that? Swayam vidatte bhajatam anichchitam. Krishna gives himself. Devotee says, आप नहीं चाहिए मेरे को बस ये दे दो. कृष्ण से ऐसा नहीं होता है. अनिच्छताम, डिवोटी नहीं चाहिए, इच्छा नहीं है. 1 + 1 3 है. I will come. Then when Krishna comes, then ichchapi dhanam, he is the reservoir of all desires. So he fulfills the desires get destroyed. So better to ask Krishna material desires. Krishna will fulfill and he'll purify. Dhruva is a classic example of this. Okay. So similarly, Lord Brahma appearing after intelligence is the presiding deity of intelligence. Lord Shiva appears after ego, is the presiding deity of false ego. It is indicated that moon god is in the mode of goodness, Brahma in the mode of passion, Lord Shiva in the mode of ignorance. The appearance of consciousness after the appearance of false ego indicates that from the beginning, material consciousness is under the mode of ignorance. So that's why material consciousness is in ignorance, because it appears after the appearance of ego. Appearance of consciousness happens after the appearance of ego. So therefore, ultimately, what we have to do, we have to purify our consciousness by chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Prabhupada never leaves the chance to give the final medicine. He never leaves answers. He never leaves any loose ends. अब क्या करना है? पता नहीं क्या करना है. क्लास तो अच्छा, लेक्चर तो अच्छा था, लेकिन करना क्या? वो नहीं बताया. So Prabhupada never leaves the chance. He always gives, because Prabhupada knows पता नहीं आगे पढ़ेगा कि नहीं पढ़ेगा. उधर ही पढ़ के बंद कर दिया तो. So that's why he gives everywhere. Cheto darpana marjana, Prabhupada writes that. And then Prabhupada writes about the samsara dava, nalalita loka. The blazing fire of material existence is due to false ego. And as soon as false ego is removed, one can understand his real identity. The next paragraph, Prabhupada brings Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Supreme Lord appeared on full moon as Gaurachandra. Akalank Gaurachandra Dila Darshan Sakalank Chandra Arakona Prayojan. So that's why Prabhupada is writing. Spotless transcendental moon. Akalanka Chandra. Gaurachandra. Material moon has spots, but Gaurachandra has no spots. In order to fix the purified mind in service of the Lord, one has to worship the spotless moon, Gaurachandra. Okay. Then Prabhupada writes how different people in different consciousness they worship different devtas. Those who are in mode of ignorance or passion, they worship Brahma or Shiva. But devotees, they worship Krishna. Chakravarti Thakur writes an important purport. Heart is the location of the four aspects of Antahakaran. What is Antahakaran?
Mind, intelligence, false ego, and the consciousness.
That is contaminated consciousness. Chitta. Girampati is Brahma. Chaityaha refers to Vasudeva. He is also the form of the Lord to be worshipped for the purification of Chitta. As Pradyumna, he is Antaryami of Hiranyagarbha, the mass of all jivas. Here it is described. Hiranyagarbha means the mass of all jivas. As Aniruddha, this is interesting. Hiranyagarbha is a subtle form of the universe, right? Who is the super soul of the universe? Universe. Garbhodaksha. गर्भोदक्षा विष्णु कहाँ से आते हैं?
Mahavishnu.
ओके सो वो महाविष्णु से आते हैं इन द सेंस दैट ही कम्स थ्रू महाविष्णु, बट एक्चुअल अवतार कहाँ से होता है? होता है प्रद्युम्न से. ओके अभी सेकंड चतुर्व्यूह में संकर्षण से विष्णु आ गए ना, महाविष्णु आ गए. सो ये गर्भोदक्षा विष्णु कहाँ से आ गए? ही कम्स फ्रॉम प्रद्युम्न. देन अंतर्यामी ऑफ इंडिविजुअल जीवा क्या है? कौन है? वो कहाँ से आते हैं? ही कम्स फ्रॉम अनिरुद्ध. सो दैट इज द अंडरस्टैंडिंग. हम लोग बोलते हैं महाविष्णु से गर्भोदक्ष आए, फिर उनसे क्षीरोदक्ष आए, बट दैट इज नॉट द क्रोनोलॉजी ऑफ अवतार. हम बोलते हैं ना विष्णु से कृष्ण आ गए. हाउ वी एक्सप्लेन दिस? लोग बोलते हैं ना विष्णु से कृष्ण आ गए, आप तो उल्टा बोल रहे हैं, कृष्ण से विष्णु आ गए. सो हाउ डू वी एक्सप्लेन दिस?
Because all the others are through Sridhar Lakshmi.
Okay.
So it seems, but actually,
Yes. So just like example is given, if a person has a multinational company and he is a CEO, he has MDs in all the different countries in different companies. So if the CEO wants to visit a particular country, the people working in that country don't know who is the CEO. वो किसको जानते हैं? वो मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर को जानते हैं. So when the CEO wants to visit a particular company, he comes along with the MD because MD को ही लोग जानते हैं. So people, ordinary worker, what he thinks? लगता है MD के साथ कोई आया है. So that is what happens when Krishna comes along with Vishnu in this world, because Vishnu is the managing director of this universe. He controls this universe. So therefore, when Krishna comes along through Vishnu, generally it is said Vishnu is the source of Krishna. So that is what is explained. Similarly, हम लोग बोल देते हैं महाविष्णु से आ गए गर्भोदक्षा विष्णु, but not. It is not like that. It is just the way he is entering in the universe. He appears from Pradyumna. Shirodaksha Vishnu appears from Aniruddha, but comes in this world through Garbhodaksha Vishnu. That is what is described here. This is understood from Laghu Bhagavatamrit. So Laghu Bhagavatamrit describes this. One should not say that the individual jiva is the presiding deity of Chitta, since it is stated that jiva lacks independent ability and cannot supply the means of acting. Chaitya refers to Antaryami. Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti. The Lord appears in two features. Externally as Acharya, internally as Chaitya Guru. Sometimes the Jiva is designated as Chaitya as well, since he identifies himself in that role. Purusha क्यों बोलते हैं? Because one starts identifying himself as Purusha. And actually he is not Purusha. Okay, next verse, translation.
The demigods and the presiding deities of the various senses were thus manifested. They wanted to wake their origin of appearance, but upon failing to do so, they re-entered the body of Virat Purusha one after another in order to wake.
So now what is happening from 62nd to 72 verses? So ये सब sense organs बन गए हैं, still the universe is not functioning. So all the sense devtas, they are now trying to wake up. They are trying to make this universe functional. So everyone is trying, but कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. So they again enter back in the Virata Rupa. So that is what is happening here. In order to wake up the sleeping deity controller within, one has to rechannel the sense activities from concentration on the outside to concentration inside. In the following verses, the sense activities which are required to wake the Virat Purusha will be explained very nicely. How to wake up, how to make the universe functional. Unless the Lord enters personally, the universe doesn't start functioning. So that is the ultimate understanding. Unless the Lord enters, nothing works. Next verse, translation.
The god of fire entered his mouth with the organ of speech, but the Virat Purusha could not be aroused. Then the god of wind entered his nostrils with the sense of smell, but still Virat Purusha refused to be awakened.
So this line comes again and again. No the tishtad tada virat. No the tishtad tada virat. उठ ही नहीं रहे हैं, उठ ही नहीं रहे हैं. सब उठाने का ट्राई कर रहे हैं कि सो ही रहे हो. So all the sense devtas, as they appear, they try to wake up. They try to make the universe functional. नहीं हो रहा है. So that's how it continues. Translation, next verse.
The sun god entered the eyes of Virat Purusha with sense of sight, but still the Virat Purusha didn't get up. Similarly, the predominating deities of the directions entered through his ears with the sense of hearing, but still didn't get up.
Next.
Predominating deity of the skin, herbs, and the seasoning plants entered the skin of the Virat Purusha with the hair of the body. But the cosmic being refused to get up even then. The God predominating over water entered his organ of generations with the faculty of creation. But the Virat Purusha still would not rise. It's all going in the reverse.
Yes. Next.
The god of death entered his hands with the organ of purification, but the Virat Purusha could not be spurred to activity. The god of Indra entered the hands with the power of grasping and groping things, but the Virat Purusha would not get up even then.
No the tishtad tada virat. Yes. Next.
The Lord Vishnu entered his feet with the faculty of locomotion, but Virat Purusha refused to stand up even then. The rivers entered his blood vessels with the blood and the power of circulation, but still the cosmic being would not be made to stay.
So this Lord Vishnu is not Hari. This is a sense dev. This is one of devtas. Yeah. Next.
The ocean entered his abdomen with hunger and thirst, but the cosmic being refused to rise to the moon. The moon god entered his heart with the mind, but the cosmic being would not be observed.
Next.
Brahma also entered his heart with intelligence, but even then the cosmic being could not be prevailed upon the data. Lord Buddha also entered his heart with the ego, but even then the cosmic being did not stop.
We will recite this verse 70. Chittena hridayam chaityaha kshetragya pravishyada
However, when the inner controller is residing over the consciousness of the heart with reason, at that very moment the cosmic being erudes from the casual world.
Yes. Chaityaha, Hridayam, Chittena Hridayam Chaitya. So when Vasudev, the Antaryami entered, he is a Kshetragya. क्षेत्रज्ञ चापि माम विद्धि सर्व क्षेत्रेषु भारत क्षेत्र क्षेत्रज्ञयोरेवम् अंतरम ज्ञान चक्षुष. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. There are two types of Kshetrajna. One is knower of one's body, another is a knower of all the bodies. So when the Supreme Lord enters, Vasudeva enters, then only the universe start functioning. Otherwise, it is not possible. Nobody can make this universe function apart from the Lord Vasudeva. That's why these creation pastimes are called as easy to understand than the other Leela avatars pastimes. At the end of the fifth canto, 5.26 point some last verse, it says, Shukdev Goswami says, the creation pastimes are easy to understand than the Leela avatar pastimes of the Lord. यार ये तो उल्टा बोल रहे हैं हमारा तो हालत खराब हो रहा है कुछ समझ नहीं रहा है इधर से क्या हो रहा है कुछ समझ नहीं रहा है. Why he is saying like this? Because it is impossible for anyone to think that I will imitate the creation pastimes of the Lord.
Correct.
मैं भी एक यूनिवर्स बनाता हूँ चलो. But it is easy to imitate the Leela of the Lord. चलो वो रास लीला कर रहे हैं हम भी करेंगे. Krishna also was crying when he was a child. Krishna was eating. Krishna was sleeping. I also do the same thing. मैं भी वही जो कृष्ण मतलब मैं भी भगवान हूँ. So that's why these pastimes are difficult to enact. So therefore they are easily understood. ये भगवान है और हम तो insignificant. So that's why the more we understand these pastimes, Krishna tells in the Shukdev Goswami tells in the second canto, Mayam Varnayato Amushya Ishwarasya Anumoditah Shanvata Shraddhaya Nityam Mayayatma Na Muhyati. One should understand the Maya of the Lord. Because one who understands how this material creation works, he will not be bewildered by the material creation. So the more we understand that he is the Supreme Lord, the more we will develop faith in that Lord. Then the 10th canto pastimes will not bewilder us. Why he is doing like this. So that's how universal being arose. Yatha prasuptam purusham pranendriya mathiyaha
कर्मेन्द्रिय मनोजितो
भगवन्ति विना
भगवन्ति विना तथा वजसा
When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working, and the mind and the intelligence cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the super soul helps him.
So this is very important to understand. When we sleep, who wakes us up? When somebody sleeps and the sound comes. So all the senses are also sleeping, including ears. So generally, Prabhupada tells ears are very important because we hear and then we wake up. But in deep sleep, the senses are also sleeping. So who wakes us up? It is the Supreme Lord, Super Soul, who is always awake. He registers, chalo sound aa raha hai, alarm baj raha hai. Then he sends the signal to the senses, to the ears, and then the entire signal thing starts. Last time we discussed, right? Or how it processes. इधर से इधर जाता है from the gross to subtle and then it goes to intelligence. Intelligence बोलता है कुछ तो आ रहा है. It is sound. Then it goes to the mind. अच्छा है कि बुरा है? अच्छा है. चलो फिर सुनते हैं. So that's how one registers the senses, the sound. So that's how the first thing which happens is super soul acknowledges, hears, and then he awakes the living entity who is sleeping. So that is what is described. The explanation of Sankhya is described here in detail in the sense that Virat Purusha is the original source of various sense organs and their presiding deities. The relationship between the Virat Purusha and the presiding deities or living entities is so intricate that simply by exercising the sense organs, which are related to deities, presiding deities, the Virat Purusha cannot be aroused. It is not possible to arouse. Only by devotional service. Prabhupada brings it to the final conclusion. Devotional service. No ambiguity. Sankhya karo, Jnana karo, devotional service and detachment. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayate Ashu Vairagya and Jnana. Bas. That is what Prabhupada is writing here. Okay, so last verse. Tamasmin Pratyagatmanam
Tamasmin
तस्मिन्
Pratyagatmanam
प्रत्यक्षमात्मानं
Yoga
ध्यायोग
Pravrittaya
प्रवृत्तय
Virakya
Therefore, through devotional detachment and advancement in spiritual knowledge acquired through concentrated devotional services, one should contemplate that super soul as present in their very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Hare Krishna.
Therefore, Tamasmin Pratyagatmanam, that Supreme Lord, Dhiya, one should meditate on the Super Soul through Bhaktya, Viraktya, and Jnanena. Through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge. And Vivichya, Vivichya means carefully consider, introspect, contemplate, understand how there is Lord in everyone's heart. And one should serve that Lord. One should understand that Lord is also there, and one should yoga pravrittaya, dhiya yoga pravrittaya, engage in devotional service. So then Prabhupada writes in the purport that it is possible to be detached only by devotional service. Bhagavati, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. Prabhupada writes that verse here. And that is the purpose of Sankhya. Ultimate purpose of Sankhya is what? Detachment. But detachment by Sankhya takes long time. Our process is begin the practice of bhakti. Detachment will come automatically. Sankhya starts with cultivating detachment and knowledge. Devotional service starts with serving Lord, and detachment and knowledge comes as a byproduct. So that is the difference. So that's how Prabhupada writes that last paragraph. It is stated that one becomes joyful in discharging devotional service. Which verse Prabhupada is paraphrasing here? One becomes joyful. Second chapter. Evam एवं प्रसन्न मनसो भगवत भक्ति योगतः भगवत तत्व विज्ञानम मुक्त संगस्य जायते. Prabhupada writes here. Bhagavad, one becomes joyful by discharging bhakti. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science of God. Bhagavad tattva vijnana. Otherwise, it is impossible. Analytical study of the elements of the material nature and concentration of the mind on the super soul are the sum and substance of Sankhya. And then Prabhupada never leaves a chance to give the ultimate. The perfection of Sankhya culminates in devotion. बस यहाँ तक छोड़ दिया तो बोलेंगे देखो बोले ना प्रभुपाद सांख्य सांख्य फॉलो करेंगे हम नहीं प्रभुपाद आगे बोलते हैं devotional service. Okay, so that is the end of this chapter. We have still 20-25 minutes. We'll start with the next chapter, understanding material nature. So now, after describing the yoga process, jnana process, so for the practitioners of Sankhya, jnana is their primary practice, which takes one to liberation. And then ultimately, ultimate aim of Sankhya is devotion. Ultimately, that should be the goal of Gyanis. But the problem is, Gyanis, when they are too much absorbed in this Brahman, Even if they get darshan of the Lord, they are so attached to Brahman that they take their mind away from the Lord's devotion. That is one of the last verses of the meditation on the lotus form of the Lord. Last में क्या बोलते हैं वो? एवं हरो भगवती प्रतिलब्ध भावो भक्त्या द्रवदृदय उत्पुलक प्रमोद. So now he is experiencing ecstatic symptoms. द्रवदृदय, heart is melting. उत्पुलक, here is standing on end, but बेचारा क्या करता है वो? औत्कंठ्य बाष्प कलया मुहुर्द्य मान, इतना सवार है उसको. Here's a here's a standing on end, trembling, choking. Tachapi chitta badisham shanakair viyungte. With great difficulty, he takes his chitta out of that form. That is unfortunate yogi. But the devotee, he develops this detachment automatically. That is not his main practice. Knowledge and detachment comes automatically. He begins with Shravanam and Kirtanam. So that is what is described by Srila Prabhupada. Because that is the dharma of a devotee. What is the dharma of a karmi? वो धर्मस्य ही आपवर्गस्य. याद किया ना हमने वो श्लोक? नहीं याद किया मत भूलिए. याद किया कि नहीं याद किया? अरे सर कैसे बोला, इतना कॉमन इतना इंपॉर्टेंट छोड़ दिया हम लोग. धर्मस्य आपवर्गस्य नार्थो अर्थायोपकल्पते. नहीं याद किया क्या? ठीक, important है. Anyways, dharma should be practiced for liberation, not for artha. And if you get artha, engage that artha in devotion, not for sense gratification. So that is the first canto, second chapter, I think 7th or 8th verse. So dharma of a karmi is to do yajna. What is the apavarga for a karmi?
Moksha.
No, karmi. Swarga.
Swarga.
So what is the dharma of ज्ञानी?
Brahman.
वो तो अपवर्ग है. धर्म क्या है? क्या करता है वो? He practices tapasa, brahmacharyena, yamena, shamena cha, damena cha, all those things. What is the dharma for a yogi? Yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, 8 limbs. What is the apavarga for a yogi? Same Brahman. What is the dharma for a devotee? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. What is apavarga for a devotee? Love of God. So a devotee understands this Sankhya. Love of God. Krishna Prem na. वो अपना अपवर्ग है, अपना liberation वही. We are not interested in going to Brahman. So devotee, he knows all this philosophy, but he is not so much attached to the cultivation of detachment. That comes automatically. So in this first section of this 27th chapter, Kapila establishes why one should aspire for liberation. Because the practice of Sankhya leads to liberation. Liberation ke liye, why one should aspire? What one gains by the practice of this Sankhya? Liberation क्यों चाहिए? So in this chapter, Kapil Dev describes the method of Bhakti Mishra Gyan, or technically called as Gyan again. 26th में भी वही बताएं, 27th में भी he is describing the same thing in more detail. Gyan. That was the third question of Devavati in the 25th chapter. वही पूछ रही हैं बार बार. So 26th chapter. So he is describing Bhakti Mishra Gyan. What is Gyan Mishra Bhakti and Bhakti Mishra Gyan? अंतर क्या है?
भक्ति विश्व ज्ञान में
ज्ञान, भक्ति मिश्र ज्ञान में ज्ञान प्रधान है, भक्ति गौण है. और ज्ञान मिश्र भक्ति में भक्ति मेन है, ज्ञान गौण है.
So in this chapter, Bhakti Mishra Gyan is described. Jnana Yoga is described. Again, 26th chapter was also the same. 27th chapter describes the same in more detail. So we'll start.
This is Sankhya, that's why this
Sankhya ही चल रहा है. Sankhya means Jnana Yoga.
Yeah.
So that's what he is continuing. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritistopi Purusho गुणैः कृत्वान् जलार्कवत्
The personality of Godhead Kapila continued when the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature because he is unchanging and does not fade proprietorship and remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water.
So in the first 5 verses, Kapila Dev, he is describing what is the need of liberation first of all. ना पहले तो बता दिया ज्ञान leads to liberation, but what is the need of liberation first of all? क्यों liberation होना है? So that is what he is describing. He says now, प्रकृति अस्थोपि पुरुषो, प्रकृति में स्थित हुआ पुरुष. Simple Hindi. Although the jiva who is situated in prakriti na ajyate prakritair gunaihi, he is not affected by the prakriti's gunas. The soul is always spiritual. Soul never gets contaminated. 13th chapter Bhagavad Gita, one of the last verses, Krishna tells, just like the sun and the sky and the air, they never mix. They are always separate. It seems that they have mixed together, but it is not like that. You find out one of the studying point 27, 28 ऐसा कुछ तो है वो श्लोक. दो श्लोकों में Krishna tells how the soul is uncontaminated, soul is spiritual, although it is in this world, but it never gets mixed with the modes of nature. We start identifying, that's why we suffer. But the soul per se is always aloof, pure. मिला क्या? कृत्स्नम आता है, कृत्स्नम कुछ तो ऐसा श्लोक आते हैं उसमें.
Basically 1333 यथा सर्वगतम
सौक्ष्म्याद आकाशम नोपलिप्यते तथा प्रकाशयत्येक
सर्वत्र स्थितो देहे.
हाँ तथात्मा नोपलिप्यते. नेक्स्ट क्या है? कृत्स्नम लोकम इमं रवि, ऐसा कुछ तो आएगा.
यथा प्रकाशयति एक
कृत्स्नम लोकम इमं रवि
क्षेत्रम क्षेत्री तथा कृत्स्नम प्रकाशयति.
What's the translation?
O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity. One within the body illuminate the entire body by consciousness.
उसके पहले वाला का translation?
पहले वाला का mix था.
हाँ, वो वाला पढ़िए.
The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, soul situated in Brahman Vishan does not mix with the body, though situated in heaven.
Yeah, same thing it is described here. Although situated in the Prakriti, najyate prakritair guna, it is not affected by the Prakriti's gunas. Avikarat akartritvan, the soul never goes any change. He is not the doer, since it is nirgunatva, without the modes. So how it happens? It is like the sun when it is reflected on the water. When the water is moving, people think sun is also moving. Sun ko to kuch bhi nahi ho raha hai. But because one starts identifying, the soul starts identifying with the changes which are happening in the nature, one thinks, I am also getting affected. That is 13.6 Krishna says. Ichha dvesha samuthena dandamohi bharne. Ichha dvesha sukham dukkham sanghatas chetana dhriti etat kshetram samasena. वो क्या बोल रहा है इसमें? What are the transformations of the body? Ichha, dvesh, sukh, dukh. Who experiences these emotions? Body or the soul? We experience or body experiences? Ichha, dvesh, sukh, dukh.
Soul identifying with the body experiences.
Generally, like that. We become distressed, we become happy or sad. Why Krishna is saying etat kshetra vikara? It is the transformation of the body.
But probably we don't saw the drama, it doesn't experience anything.
That's the question. Why he is telling it is the transformation of the body. एतत् क्षेत्रम क्या हो? इच्छा द्वेष सुखम दुःखम संघात चेतना एतत् क्षेत्रम समासेन सविकारम. She just said क्षेत्र विकार. That means the changes are happening in the body, and because the soul starts identifying with the body, the soul experiences all these emotions. Ideally, nothing is happening with the soul. So that's why the soul is always pure, always in its original state. But in the contaminated consciousness, one starts identifying. The same thing we have heard many times. Sun is like the soul. In this verse, Jal Arkavat, the water moves, it seems sun is moving. Sun is like a soul, and the water is like three modes. The transformations are happening in the modes, and the soul starts identifying. So, soul also suffers. So, that is what is happening here. So, that's how Kapila Dev he begins the explanation. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes. Kapila shows the difference of the jiva from Prakriti in order to present liberation. Well, what is the need of liberation? That is a question. So, need of liberation is till the time we will identify, we will suffer. So, if we want to be free of the suffering, first we have to get liberated. That's why he is making the foundation of this explanation. Though the jiva is situated in Prakriti, it is not affected, although because it is not a doer and consequently unchanging. Since it is without gunas in deep sleep and during final devastation. It is like the rays of the sun on the water. ये आपने समझा क्या? यहाँ पे लिखा है since it is without gunas in deep sleep and during final devastation. What is the meaning of this? In the deep sleep, even our mind is not functioning. Body is not functioning. Practically, in deep sleep, jiva is in a liberated state. Yeah, that is what is described here. It's not affected. Another way, it will come in the end of this chapter. Kapila Dev tells there are two ways one can experience liberation while being in this body. One way, while being in this body, one can experience liberation. Kab? Deep sleep. That is a stage where we feel liberated. And next, after devastation, when the jivas enter the body of Mahavishnu, they don't have gross body, they don't have subtle body. That means they are liberated beings. But that liberation is not very happy for jiva. वो मजा नहीं आता है जीवा को. That is not a permanent liberation. That is like forceful detachment. मेरी इच्छा तो अभी भी है, बट क्या करें, जबरदस्ती मेरा सब प्रॉपर्टी ले लिया.
But उनको सती body next, so you won't have any इच्छा.
Still the desire is there. Soul still identifies. Because see what happens when you come in this world, the soul had a desire, right? Mind is just facilitating material desires of the soul. So the soul developed a desire to enjoy separately, came in this world, and to facilitate that desire, the subtle body is given. So the desire is the first thing which is there with the soul, which is the property of the soul, independent of whether mind is there or not. So अभी इच्छा तो अभी भी है, लेकिन subtle body नहीं है, gross body नहीं है. So it is a liberated state, but still the jiva is not happy in that liberated state. It is like being in Kuntha even in Vaikuntha. Durvasa Muni is same situation है, वैकुंठ में भी जाके कुंठ में. So that's what he is saying. During deep sleep and during final devastation, the jiva is in liberated stage without gunas. And then he gives the example.
Desire is not a property of subtle body, function of subtle body.
It is. But the soul is not dependent on the subtle body to desire. Soul has all the desires, right? Desire to serve Krishna. How it comes when subtle body is not there in the spiritual world?
So that is the pure form of the soul.
Yes.
Yes.
Soul in its pure form also has all the functions of the subtle body and the gross body. वो सब है सोल के पास. सोल को कुछ जरूरत नहीं है in the spiritual world. But in the material world, you want to experience material things. Your spiritual body is not suitable to enjoy material things. So you have to have some material instruments to enjoy the material things. So therefore, a material subtle body is given. Then the gross body is given. Soul in the spiritual world has all the desires to serve Krishna. So how the soul develops a desire to serve Krishna when mind is not there? The soul has all the facilities, all the faculties of the mind, intelligence, and ego. Pure ego is there. Pure ego. I am servant of Krishna.
So when we discuss about material intelligence, spiritual intelligence, what's the difference? The material intelligence is
The spiritual intelligence means what we are doing is we are purifying the spiritual material intelligence by doing spiritual things.
activities.
Spiritual activities purify our material intelligence, and the same material intelligence works in spiritual way. The intelligence remains material, but it works in spiritual way. Example is given when the iron rod is kept in fire. The iron remains the iron, but it acts like fire. Similarly, when the material senses, material mind, material intelligence come in touch with spiritual subject, Krishna, same material senses, material mind, material intelligence starts acting in spiritual ways. So that is called as purifying the material contaminated intelligence. The nature of the intelligence remains material only, but it starts functioning in a spiritual way. Okay, so I think we'll stop here. We'll continue next time. I'll just read the purport of this and then we'll stop. In the previous chapter, Lord Kapila Dev has concluded that simply by beginning the discharge of devotional service, one can attain detachment. The last verse says, Bhaktya Viraktya Jnanam. Prabhupada writing that. Simply by practicing devotional service, one can attain detachment and a transcendental knowledge. Here, the same principle is confirmed. A person who is detached from the modes remains like sun reflected on water, not affected by the movements of the water. Similarly, when one engages in devotional service, he becomes like the sun reflected on water, detached from the world. Next paragraph, he says, Avikar means without change. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that every living entity is part of the Lord, and his eternal position is to cooperate or dovetail his energy with the Lord. That is his unchanging position. As soon as he employs his energy and activities for sense gratification, this is called vikar. This is transformation. Similarly, and this is the same thing which I was just telling, even in this material body, when he practices devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, he comes to the position which is without change. So the body remains material, but starts acting in spiritual ways. So is the body of spiritual master material or spiritual?
Body is material, but it is spiritualized.
Acting in spiritual way, it is spiritualized. Same thing is happening here. So when one is liberated, the same material elements start acting in spiritual ways. That is liberation. Liberation means, what is liberation? Muktir hitva anyatha rupam swarupena vyavasthiti. Prabhupada has quoted this hundreds of times. Swarupena, that is reinstatement in its original position. When one becomes detached from material attraction and engages in devotional service, that is changelessness. Everything else changes in this world. The more things change in this world, we should catch hold of those things which don't change. Bhakti never changes, holy names of the Lord, and the Lord never changes. Otherwise, people are catching the things of the world. That's why they're always in anxiety. Kab badal jayega, kab chala jayega. So a devotee, he is fearless because he is taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. That is called as Abhaya Charanar Bhajahure Mana Srinandanandana Abhaya Charanar. When one does something at his own risk, there is a sense of proprietorship and there is a reaction. When one does something for Krishna, there is no proprietorship, no reaction. So that is how a liberated being is not affected. We'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Srimad Bhagvatam ki Jai.
जय जय भगवतम की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, हरे कृष्ण, दत्त प्रणाम।